On today's episode of the McCann Dogs podcast,
it's so crucial that we continue to remember that these are not little people. They're not our fur kids. They are animals. They are dogs, and they're governed by a completely different set of laws in being animals than they need to live with in our human world.
And now, Instructor Shannon.
Welcome back to the McCann Dogs podcast. It is season 4, and I am in the studio today with Instructor Swanny. I'm Instructor Shannon. For those of you who are new to the McCann Dogs podcast, we spend a lot of time trying to educate and help people have the best possible relationship that they can with their four-legged family members. And today is going to be no different. We like to talk as much as possible about things that get thrown around in the dog training community that maybe need some clarification. We like to talk about things that are misconceptions in the dog training world, and that leads us to one of the most misunderstood things in dog training, which is leadership. And my goal today with this podcast is to simplify leadership so that our listeners, anybody who is confused about what this really means, they can leave this podcast with a little bit more clarity about how to be a good leader for their dogs and what the word leader actually means.
Yes. But I have to, a couple of weeks ago, we did a podcast on should we allow our dogs on the furniture?
Right.
And yesterday I had the funniest moment happen. And just going back pertaining to it, I had an ultrasound appointment. I've had an injured elbow, and the ultrasound office was in a residential area. They had no parking lot, so I had to park on one of the city streets. And I parked my car, and I was walking over, and there was a couch at the curb, and the couch had been put there for somebody for the for the dump. Someone,
okay.
The city's going to come and pick it up and throw it in the garbage. And it was a beautiful sunny day, and I walked by, and sitting on this couch at the curb was a cat.
Oh.
Just sitting there enjoying the couch.
This is my couch.
Yes. And I giggled. I thought that was quite funny. Went and had the ultrasound. And when I came back, lo and behold, there was 3 cats laying on this couch, sitting to go out at the dump. So I just thought it was so funny that animals will seek out furniture, even if it's just out there. Those cats probably thought they had wow, someone's put an outdoor couch out for us.
How nice of them.
Right, and it was right at the side of the road, and these 3 cats were enjoying the sun, laying on the couch.
So funny.
It was quite funny.
I wonder if maybe it was just the cat's couch. Maybe you assumed it was going out to the dump, but maybe it was just there for the cats.
I'm going to have to drive past again. Maybe that is a permanent couch that's been put out for any animal passing by.
Oh my goodness. Oh, well, that is funny that he had friends join him.
Right, yes.
What a good time.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you are interested in demystifying whether or not your dog should be allowed up on the furniture, we actually, as Instructor Swanny said, we did an episode a couple of weeks ago on just that topic and why it is sometimes okay and why it is sometimes not okay, and all of the nitty-gritty details that might surround allowing your dog up on the couch or deciding not to. So if you're curious and you'd like to know beyond the cats finding couches out in the wild, by all means, have a listen to that episode. I think it will provide some clarity. So that's a good story. Alrighty, so leadership. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say the word leadership?
It just means that my dog respects me.
Hey, I like that.
My dog respects me and listens and wants to work with me.
Perfect. And I love that. That's so simple. And that's exactly it. It's a dog that understands that they can look to us for good advice. They can look to us for good information, and we are going to be there to support them and provide that information. But there's also an accountability factor there as well, so that they can't just be as loose and hooligan-like as they might possibly like. And I'll tell you right off the bat, I'm sure I'm going to say some unpopular or even surprising things today, Swanny.
You always say unpopular, surprising things.
It's sort of my MO. I think, Swanny, you'll probably say some unpopular and surprising things today, but this is all in the interest of educating.
Right.
We've been McCann Professional Dog Trainers. We just celebrated our 40th anniversary last year, so we're 41-year professional dog trainers. trainers and loads of years of experience collectively and individually amongst our staff. And we like to do our best to share that knowledge and uncover the truths so that you can have the best possible relationship with your dog.
We've really evolved and learned and changed. If you looked at McCann Dog Trainers 40 years ago, it's not the same McCann Dog Trainers that we have now. We we learn, and science has really progressed dog training, and we've paid attention, and we've changed our methods, altered our methods, tried out different things. So we're progressive. Not archaic, we're progressive.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of our strengths. And then in addition to that, we have the practical experience of working with hundreds of dogs every week to be able to balance out all of the understanding of science and real life and make it all work so that we have a great program to help you with your family dog and to help you through problems as well.
Yes.
So my first question for anybody listening is your dog training a joy or is it a grind? You know, is it something that you look forward to with your dog? Did you get your dog, bring them home, and are you now enjoying the training process? Or did you get your dog, bring them home, and are you struggling and finding that it's more than you were bargaining for and that it's troubling in some respects and your dog is doing things that they shouldn't and you're not sure how to fix that, etc. So what do you think about that statement? Is your dog training a joy or a grind?
Well, I would what I would love is my dog training experience to be a Walt Disney movie.
Love it.
I would love for that to happen, but Walt Disney movies are not real life. And we all know that.
Yep.
If they were, we would have little animals helping us with our housework. And,
singing and putting on our house coats for us.
Right.
Yeah.
I know. But
doing our hair.
So our relationships with our dogs are going to have rough patches.
Yes. So
I want, for the most part, my relationship with my dog to be a joy. But I know there's going to be rough patches.
Yeah.
And it's the same with any family member. I growing up, I had rough patches with my parents, but I had rough patches with my brother. That's life. That's just the way life is. Yeah. So dog training's not going to be 100% joy. There are going to be some rough patches.
But ideally, it is not 100% of a grind either. And
right,
it's not
yes,
something
it's not the grind, yes.
Yeah, not something that makes you feel in over your head, like you're treading water, like you're drowning sometimes. If that's how you feel, there's something wrong. So today's episode is really for you. And you're absolutely right. It's so unrealistic to expect it to be joyful all the time. But it should be. Like, I look forward to training my puppies.
I love training.
I have
such
a puppy.
An escape. Yes.
Yeah, I have a puppy coming home shortly, hopefully within the next few months. If the female comes into season and cooperates, things will start moving along in the right direction. And I'm so looking forward to that. I'm not dreading the process. I'm looking forward to shaping and molding my next new best friend that is going to come into my life. So we want everybody to have that same experience.
Right, yes. Just as like you might look forward to going out to play a game of golf, we look forward to going out and training our dog. It's become an enjoyable hobby.
Absolutely.
And it's enjoyable because of the good leadership skills that we've shown the puppy right from the beginning.
Yes, absolutely. And if you're really struggling with your dog and you're finding that it is more grind than joy, then chances are leadership is one of the things that's probably missing. And that's not to say that you are not capable of good leadership. It's to say that a lot of the times this gets confused in our society. People aren't sure what leadership means. And a lot of the times the first thing that people jump right on when I say the word leadership is pack mentality.
Yeah, and that's like I grew up in the dog world. So my dad's an obedience judge, and so I've been around dogs for a long time, and never once did my parents ever talk about dog packs or wolf packs, and I don't even think about that. I don't know.
Absolutely,
it's just I'm the human. I'm supposedly the one to make the good decisions and the intelligent one in the relationship. So you need to listen to me for your safety.
Yes.
That's how I look at it. I don't care about wolf packs or dog packs. I'm not a dog.
Absolutely.
I'm not a dog. I'm a whole different species.
Yes. And that's exactly it. And there's this confusion out there because the whole pack leadership, leader of the pack, became this popular thing thanks to a TV show that's out there.
Yes.
And it sort of mystified the entire situation where people thought, okay, well, this is one way to look at dogs. And then when you move away from that, it means that you have to throw leadership out the window, and that's really throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Leadership is such an important thing, and I want to shape people to think about leadership as guidance. Think about someone in your life that when the chips are down, or when you're confused, or even when you just need some sort of direction, think about the person that you want to turn to. That is a leader. That's what good leadership is all about. It's someone who's going to give guidance. Like, I want my dog to be able to look to me and say, I'm not sure what to do in this situation. And I can provide those answers to them. And if you try to look at your dog training or your dog as being on the same level as you are, it's akin to trying to raise a child and putting them on the same level as you are as well. We're elevated because we have the experience. We know how to keep them safe. We know how to give them good information. We know the things that they need to learn in order to, continue to develop and be a well-behaved human or a well-behaved dog in our society. So think about leadership as that. Leadership is not about being tyrannical. It's not about being mean or heavy-handed. That's extremely poor leadership, and I would say bullying. I would say it's not leadership at all. It's something entirely different, and it's never going to give you the relationship that you want with your dog. Let's talk about relationship for a minute. Okay. What do you think the correlation between leadership and good relationship with a dog is? How would you put that in a nutshell?
In a nutshell, that's hard, Shannon.
It is
that's
a hard question.
That's
yeah,
a hard
absolutely.
question. Yes, Shannon springs questions on me.
I do.
She doesn't give me any thought before the podcast. So they're truly just whatever pops out of my mouth at the time.
Sometimes that's the same for me as well when I'm asking the question.
Yes. I often don't even know the topic of the podcast till Shannon announces it. So it's very much just off the top of my head.
Yeah, we want to have a good organic conversation.
So the correlation between relationship and
good leadership
is trust.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I'm going to make the best decisions for my dogs. Fairness, consistency.
I love the way you're putting this.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking when I asked the question, I was thinking this is an immense answer because relationship is immense.
Right.
If we, and I'm of course always in awe of the things that come out of your mouth because you say such wonderful things.
I say some crazy things
You
too.
do say some crazy things, which are fun, and we like that as well. But honestly, I think that's such a superb answer because I was thinking it's just an immense thing. It's everything. It's the entire entity of why we have dogs. Like just having this relationship with them where you can communicate, where you can hang out and share space and share time and enjoy each other on such a full level. Because they look to you for good advice instead of going, okay, first off, you're not a good leader, so I don't even know you exist. Or second off, you're not a good leader and I'm frightened of you because, a lot of people tend to get frustrated with the situation and then they end up getting angry with the dog instead of leading the dog and guiding the dog and showing them what they should, which of course drives a huge wedge in relationship.
And I look at it too. It's like, here we are, we're bringing an animal into our house.
Yes.
And it's an animal that we can develop a relationship with, unlike any other animal. Now, I know you can develop relationships with other animals, but the dog one is different.
It is.
The dogs want to do stuff for us. Like,
they
dogs love to please us. They're looking for somebody that they can look up to.
Yes.
100%.
And that guidance and that ability to simply sit back and enjoy life because there's a strong leader taking care of things for you. Oh my goodness.
I would love that. I would love to have somebody in my life that just looked after every little thing for me. That would be so awesome. They provide me a nutritious dinner.
I'm not sure that I would love that. I don't know.
Well, if they were a good leader.
Every detail? Yeah, if they were a good leader. If they took, that's
if they were good. Like, I'm sure you would love for me to look after every detail of your life.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
I know. Could you imagine how I dress you every day?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure that, I can only envision how that would turn out.
No, I would be, I wouldn't be a
You
good
would be
leader.
an excellent leader.
I would be an excellent leader, but I'd be a funny leader too.
Yeah. You would be a hilarious leader. But you know what? That's the thing. My brain immediately thought somebody taking care of everything for me in a negative way. And this is probably part of the problem with the word leader is people think that people go to the negative. But if you were my leader and you were a good leader, that would mean you were taking my needs into account.
Yes.
You were taking my wants into account. You were taking care of those needs and wants in a way that fulfilled me.
Right.
Then you know what? Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
I'll let you lead me.
Yeah.
I'll sit back. You can lead me. But you have to remember that
We're going shopping for some dresses. Some pink ones.
And I like to live on more than just sugar.
Oh, well, I don't know. This relationship's not going to work out. Yeah, I can only serve candy.
We tease Swanny a lot because she likes a lot of candy.
I run on sugar.
She loves candy. Alrighty, so if you were to put in a nutshell then, just to sort of wrap up what leadership actually is, what a good leader looks like, what are those qualities? And I know we already talked about a lot of them, but what are those qualities, the consistency factor, et cetera, et cetera?
It is a dependable, trustable, predictable. Dogs love predictability.
Predictable. That's such a good one. Yes.
Person that guides and teaches and is fair and is kind, but can also call you out when you're being naughty.
Absolutely.
Yes.
The feedback portion of things, giving feedback, both good and bad feedback, is so important.
Yes.
It's so important that our dogs know. This one, I always go to the analogy in my head. If we only gave good feedback, if we only said, you're right, right? You're playing the hot potato game, and not hot potato, what is it? What is it? Hot and cold.
Hot and cold.
Hot and cold game. And all you do is tell the person who's playing when they're hot. That takes away half the information. Right. And I always think that this is like, if I was teaching my child how to safely cross the street and I only relied on waiting until my child wasn't crossing the street to say, you're right, I'd be in quite a predicament.
Right.
You know, I use both sides of the equation to keep my child safe. And if my child started to dart out into the street, I'd be grabbing their arm and I'd be saying, no, you don't. That is not an acceptable thing to do, because that is much kinder than letting my child figure out on their own by getting hit by a car or something awful that is the wrong thing to do. So there will be correction in life, in the environment, whether it comes from, the unfortunate accident of being hit by the car, a horrible accident of being hit by the car, or whether it comes from me grabbing the child's arm to stop them from darting out into the street.
Yes.
There needs to be information, both black and white, both the good and the bad, for my dog to clearly understand what the expectation is in any situation. And of course, we want to weight things to the good as much as possible.
Right. Yes.
And this is why we want to be good leaders for our dog, because good leaders don't let things go to the point where they have to be wrong over and over and over again. That's not a good way to learn.
Like, think about when you're at work, good bosses that you've had, good coaches that you've had, good teachers that you had. What were the qualities that made you think, I like this person, I'm willing to follow them?
Yes.
And then think of qualities that you didn't like. And you want to make sure you're having the qualities that you like as a leader for your dog.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And put them in the comments too. If there's something you think we've missed, put that in the comments. What do you like about, leaders, and what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And no question is a silly question.
No.
This can be such an overwhelming and confusing topic, and there's information coming at people from every direction. And of course, everybody's agenda and everybody's opinion is out there in the world, often presented as fact instead of what it truly is, which is opinion. And we are so quick to access any of that information these days that it is completely understandable how confusing this whole thing is. So, ask the questions. We're always looking for topics and insight for what people would like to hear about on the McCann Dogs podcast. So by all means, if you have questions about anything, you can comment on our YouTube podcast channel. There's a great comment feature there. Of course, if you're listening to audio only, not all platforms have commenting features, but there is one way that you can access us, and we're always happy to help and answer questions. So
yes, yeah.
Alrighty, so leadership is the ability to nurture and guide,
right?
And we want to be the person that our dog looks to for that advice.
Right.
We want to be ready to give direction.
Yes, I remember there's a quote you often hear. It says, "Be the person that your dog thinks you are."
Yeah, I love that.
Yes. So our dogs,
we would
adore
all be
us
better
already.
people.
So we owe it to them.
Yes.
To be able to lead them.
Absolutely. And part of that is not putting them in over their heads and not expecting them to know and understand things that they have no way of knowing yet.
Right.
And this goes back to, I love it when you say you're living with an animal, because it is so true. And we're sort of getting detached from the idea that dogs are animals in our society because they fill such a bigger role. So it's understandable that we're forgetting that it's actually an animal.
Right.
But at the same time, it's so crucial that we continue to remember that these are not little people. They're not our fur kids. They are animals. They are dogs, and they're governed by a completely different set of laws in being animals than they need to live with in our human world. So,
and I often get asked when I'm teaching in-person classes, people will say, I tell him to be quiet and he doesn't. And then I say, well, how did you teach him to be quiet? How did you teach what that word meant?
Yeah.
And then you can see a light bulb go on.
Right.
Oh, I say, they don't understand English.
No.
Like we have to teach them what these words mean.
Absolutely. And that's true of all of it. I'm so glad you said that, because a lot of times people expect their dogs to come when they're called without having done the work. They expect them to be able to stay home and not tear apart the house without having done any of the prep work.
Or they expect them to be housebroken. They expect them to know not to pee in the house.
Yeah, expect them to know how to be quiet when, time comes to be quiet, etc.
Not to nip their children.
Yes,
Dogs
absolutely.
don't know. That's how they play.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
if you watch two puppies playing together, they're all teeth and fur and fly and spit and it's fun to watch. And as humans, we watch it and we go, oh, that's so fun. They're having a blast biting each other and wrestling and playing. And then that happens to us as humans and we go, oh my gosh, they're aggressive. We don't know what to do. We actually have done some episodes on nipping.
Right.
So please have a look back through the McCann Dogs podcast catalog, or check out our YouTube channel where we have something like 850 or 900 videos that are all educational and looking to help you do better things with your four-legged family member. So check out all of our content and you will, I think, be hooked.
And I think another quote I've heard, I might misquote this one, but it's, there is no greater disservice to a dog in giving him in calling him a person or a human.
Love that.
There's no greater disservice. They're dogs.
Yes.
Like, be proud of that.
Absolutely.
Like, this is a dog.
Yes. They're magnificent
Why do
creatures.
we want them to be more like humans?
Yeah.
Like, humans aren't always great. Some
It's true.
humans are great, but you know what? Dogs,
Yeah.
most Laos are great. Like, don't make them a human.
Exactly. My favorite quality about dogs is the honesty factor, is the fact that I'm not getting it out of them if I haven't put it into them, that their reactions to every situation are absolutely honest. They're never placating you. They're never pretending that everything's okay when it's not.
Right.
These creatures are so honest. And that's the truest thing for me. Like that's the most amazing thing that I love about dogs is I can take them at 100% face value. And like you spend a lot of time with humans and the insecurities in us, of course, like jump out like, oh, did they really mean that compliment? Or are they just saying that?
Yes.
And like, you know,
or why are they creating drama? We don't need any drama.
Exactly. Yes. We never need to do that with our dogs. No. We never need to question them. We can always take them at face value and know that if there's something missing, it's them calling us out on that thing missing.
Exactly,
and it gives us an idea that we can do better.
Right. Like if they chew up our slippers, they didn't chew up our slippers because they're angry at us. They chewed up our slippers because the slippers smell like us and they love us. And, you know, they started licking and, you know, smelling and the next thing started to chewing. Like, it's the opposite almost.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's kind of a compliment. Oh, they like me best in the family because they chewed up my slippers.
Yes. But yeah, they don't do things out of spite.
No, they definitely don't. So being a good leader means structuring your environment so that your dogs get to be right far more often than they're wrong. And that's not to say that they're always going to be right. There's no such thing as errorless learning. You know, mistakes happen and they make mistakes and we need to guide them from that.
Right. And they're learning opportunities.
Exactly. Absolutely. And a lot of the times dogs sort of, they shoot themselves in the foot a little bit with this because as puppies, as baby puppies, young puppies, right up until, you know, somewhere between 12 and 16 weeks, they start to hit this development period where they get a little bit more independent with life. But up until that point, they're usually very dependent on the leader, you know, whoever that leader may be, if it's the mama dog, if it's a human now, whatever that situation may be, the puppy is usually instinctually going to follow, going to stay stay close, going to cooperate.
Right.
And a lot of the times humans will, they'll use their voice as a natural thing with dogs. I always talk to my dogs. It's just ingrained.
Right.
We have quote unquote conversations all the time where it's just me getting to say whatever I want and them looking at me with adorable expressions or moving forward with things. But we use a lot of words, and as puppies, our puppies really orient towards us for safety, for instinctual safety.
Right. It's like a baby duck. The baby duck doesn't go off on its own. The baby duck follows its mom around the pond.
Perfect.
Because
that's such a perfect image.
Safe. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I love that. Absolutely.
So the baby dog follows who they're perceiving at that moment as the leader to keep them safe.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And in that, when they're following the humans around, a lot of times the humans say, oh, you know what? I got lucky. I don't need to train this dog. He already comes when he's called. And
or they give themselves credit. I've already trained him.
Yeah.
And it's like, no. This is natural behavior. Yes. It's going to fall apart very soon.
Absolutely. And then when it does fall apart, it's this big shock.
Yes.
And we are huge proponents of early training being easy training. So as soon as your puppy comes home, join us for Online Puppy Essentials. You will not regret it. The 8-week mark, they can start right away at. If you're joining us for in-person classes, you do have to wait until the puppy's 10 weeks of age just because of vaccination concerns for in-person classes. But you can start right away online at 8 weeks of age, and you can make use of that cooperative behavior.
Yes.
And then when that development period does hit between 12 and 16 weeks, you're already that much further ahead with your dog having a lot of repetition of success with the basics. And it just makes training so much easier from there. So
and you've developed that relationship.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's exactly it. So your puppy's already going to be seeing you as a leader because you've done good training with them, And this is it's not earth-shattering training. It's not anything that's, so overcomplicated that you need 10 manuals to figure it out. It's doing things like teaching them learning systems, teaching them how to follow food as a lure, to get into different positions, teaching them how to be accepting of our touch, teaching them how to settle with us when we tell them to settle. Any of my puppies by 12 weeks of age, if I say settle and take a hold of their collar, they instantly drain the energy out of them. They instantly will sit. That's not because they're good puppies. It's because I've taught them that.
Yes.
Through repetition, I've taught them to play and have fun with me. And then when I tell them settle and take the collar, that means that when they calm, they're going to get lots of rewards for that.
Yes.
It's a bit of a process to teach from start to finish, but it's not anything earth-shattering. It's pretty simple. It's just a matter of repetition and making small progression.
Right.
And helping the puppy understand that listening to me is a good thing. Settling when I say settle and take the collar often results in rewards, and it's just as valuable for them as that play type behavior as well. There's all sorts of things that we teach so that we can be good leaders early on with our puppies, and then that leadership follows us through as we teach things like coming when called and walking nicely on leash. All of those skills are so easy to teach if your dog views you as a good leader.
Well, think of even if you're a teacher and you're a teacher of a kindergarten class.
Love it.
Most of those kids love being in kindergarten and they love learning, and the things that you're teaching are simple and fun. Now, and so the kids, you're having a great time. Now imagine you're a grade 7 or 8 teacher and you have preteens and early teens. Those kids don't want to be there and they don't want to learn. That's the difference. So you want to start your puppy early when they want to learn and the sun shines, out of your head, like to the puppy. Good catch. Yes. Whereas if you start when your puppy's in its adolescence, 7, 8, 9 months, the puppy's already at, what do they know? What do they know? I know more.
That is so brilliant. Sometimes you just have such a great way of wording things. You always have such a great way of wording things, but that was so brilliant because now you've got a dog that doesn't understand that cooperation makes sense for them because they've never had that value imprinted on them. Right. Whereas if you've started training early and you've started training in a really nice positive way and your puppy likes learning and they have clear boundaries as well. The boundaries are an important piece, but really, the big thing that we're focusing on is teaching them skills. We don't want to get to the point where we're expecting them to know how to come when they're called and we haven't put in the time and the energy. Yes. That's poor leadership. Being in any situation where you're hollering at your dog because they're doing something wrong, that's poor leadership, and they're never going to learn what they're supposed to be doing.
Exactly. Imagine your boss doing that at work, suddenly, coming in and yelling that you're doing something wrong and you've had no training in it.
Exactly. How are you ever going to learn that thing by that method?
Right.
That it's just It's not going to happen.
Right.
No amount of intimidation is going to teach you how to get this report done. And it's the same with our dogs.
Yes.
No amount of intimidation is going to teach your dog how to walk nicely on a leash.
Right.
No
or
amount of
not to jump up on people.
Exactly. You might be able to intimidate and train in a forceful enough way that you shut your dog down and they become a little robot that just tries to avoid any sort of heavy duty correction and they're just, walking beside you like a little robot, but they don't have a true understanding that walking at your side is what you want.
Right.
And as soon as you start to take your thumb up off that dog, you're putting them under your thumb. As soon as you start to take your thumb up off that dog, they don't really have a solid understanding.
Right.
And chances are, because they don't have value for this thing, their self-governing is going to take them back to being a dog, right? It's that reflex action. It's something that is ingrained in them and instinctual.
Right.
So you really aren't any further ahead. You're going to have to be intimidating and put them under your thumb for your whole life. And that's
no one
not
wants
fun.
to do that.
No, of
no one
course
wants
not.
to do that. No, and we don't train our dogs to be robots. We train them so they can have freedom.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And they can have joy. And, one of my favorite things in the world, actually my favorite time of the day is my morning walk with the dogs. And there's nothing better than me going out and, taking my dogs off leash in the safe environments that I go to and saying, okay, go sniff. And we walk along. And of course, I expect them to be responsive. And I don't expect them to be responsive because I expect it. I expect them to be responsive because I've trained it. I've trained them to be responsive and I've trained them to keep their ears open, even if they're chasing bunnies, even if they're chasing squirrels, I'm very confident in my recall and I've worked really hard on that recall and I've made sure that I've added the motion factors in and I've proofed through those things.
Right.
So when we're on trail and my dogs go hightailing off chasing the bunnies, I call them back and it's a big party when they come back and they always come back. I still have them. So they're still with me.
Yeah. That's the testament there. I still have my dogs. I took them off leash and I still have them.
Yeah, absolutely. But no amount of me trying to intimidate those dogs would ever teach them to come off of the bunnies.
No.
I need to teach them with good, clear information. And of course, again, that is both right and wrong. They make mistakes and they get information back from those mistakes of what they need to do. And we continue forward. And I don't put them in a position where my only recourse is to try to yell at them and holler at them to get them to listen. I don't put them in that position because then that makes me a poor leader.
Right.
So
leaders don't yell.
Exactly. And this is where the management tactics come into play. So until my dog has a solid recall that I'm really confident in, they don't come off leash. Right. They might have a long line dragging
Long
so they
lines
can
are
have
excellent.
a little, they can have a little bit more freedom. We can enjoy life. I mean, I certainly don't spend all of those days where they're in training mode. I certainly don't spend all of that with, militant precision with all of the things I'm trying to teach. They have their downtime too.
Right.
We still go on trail walks. I might take the younger dog out individually so that I can work individually with that young dog, but I'll do the same thing just on a long line. I just make sure that I have a fail safe in place. I'll tell them, okay, go sniff. And then we take that opportunity on trail to practice things like the recall. And I've got the long line to back myself up. And, the dog gets it right every single time because I don't give them an opportunity to not get it right. I've got my fail safe in place. So if they do make a mistake, I can follow through right away and get them back on track.
Right. Yes. And a lot of students will say, well, I feel bad for him. I want to give him that freedom. I feel bad for him. But it's like, you have to do the training then. Like, don't feel bad for your dog. Feel bad for yourself because you've let your dog down. Yeah. It's like, before my son knew how to swim, if all the kids were swimming in the deep water, I wouldn't say, I feel bad for my son because he's not in the deep water with the other kids. Okay, in you go.
Yeah.
That would be, you would never do that.
Absolutely.
So why would I say, I feel bad for my dog because he can't run off leash? Well, I better do something about that.
Yes.
So he can run off leash.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And you would have spent the time then teaching your son to be a confident swimmer so that he can join the other kids in the deep end.
Yes.
And then he's got the rest of his life to enjoy swimming in the deep end.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. And same with my dog. I'm going to teach my dog the skills so that they can spend the rest of their lives doing the things that I would feel bad that they couldn't do if I hadn't trained them.
Yeah. Brilliant. Absolutely. And that's exactly
That was a deep thought.
It was. I mean, realistically, we spend the first, I would say 6 months to a year of our, did that make sense? Yeah. Yeah, about the first 6 months of a year, 6 months to a year, depending on the dog and depending on the the individual personalities.
Right,
They're
yeah.
all a little bit different.
Yeah, and some breed tendencies, like sometimes you spend longer with sight hounds. And,
Exactly,
yes.
absolutely. And breed tendencies do count for a lot.
You can't take the genetics out of a dog.
Absolutely. And there was an interesting comment on YouTube the other day that I actually wanted to talk a little bit about, because somebody said that they thought we didn't spend time, or we spent time saying that breed tendencies didn't really matter. And I think that it's been misinterpreted. Breed tendencies definitely do matter. They will shape how your dog is going to act in a lot of situations. They are huge pieces of the puzzle when it comes to our dogs. And it's one of the reasons that having purebred dogs and predictability will help you with your training and help to ensure that you have a good match in your family and that dog is going to be well suited to you. What we don't ever do with breed tendencies is use them as an excuse.
Right. Yes.
So
yes.
There is no breed tendency out there that would make me say that dog is untrainable. And it is one of my missions in life to convince everybody that if you like that breed, you know what, as long as you know what you're getting into, as long as you're prepared with your tactics, and if you're getting a Malinois, for example, that Malinois is not going to be a weekend warrior. You need to have solid time to dedicate to that dog every single day. They are capable of working a full-time job and then some.
Yes. Well, I had a phone call once in the office. I was answering the phone, and a lady called, and they're having trouble with their dog growling at visitors, growling at children coming to visit their home. And I asked what breed it was, and it was a Great Pyrenees. And Great Pyrenees are bred to guard a flock, to guard the homestead. And I thought to myself, maybe this wasn't the choice I would have got for a dog for an active, busy household with children coming, extended family coming. And I know there's wonderful Great Pyrenees out there.
Of course, absolutely.
There's wonderful. I've seen one at my son's school. There was a Great Pyrenees that came every day to drop their child off with the owner, of course, and with the mom. And it was a wonderful dog. But there's going to be some that pull from their genetics and say, I've been bred for centuries to guard my homestead.
That's right.
So I'm going to growl at that person.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I explained that to the person. I said, of course we can help you with this, but we're working against genetics, and we need to be improvising now and be out of the box training. And it's going to be much different than training a gregarious golden retriever. That's like, come on, I want everyone in the neighborhood in my house.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. So, what would you say to somebody? So here's the scenario that presents. This person calls the office before they've gotten the Great Pyr, and they say, you know what, I just love the breed. I love the way they look. I love their temperaments, but I want to make sure that, knowing that I'm working against genetics, I want to make sure that I don't end up with a situation where the dog feels the need to guard the homestead from family and friends, etc. I like the guard dog thing when, it's going to be a stranger coming to see if they can break into my house, but I want to make sure that my mother-in-law can come over and be safe, and the kids next door can come and knock on the door to sell Girl Guide
or
cookies.
They run into the yard to get a ball they've thrown over there. That happens a lot in the city. Yes,
exactly. So what would your advice be to that person?
Well, I would say you're going to find a breeder who is very ethical, and good breeders know their bloodlines. They know their dog's temperaments. You might want to choose a breeder who's been breeding more show lines that, rather than a breeder who's actually got dogs who are working as predator control, taking down coyotes.
Yeah.
Those ones are too close to their genetics.
Yes.
Hey, look for a breeder who's breeding for, show lines and, different type of temperament, and be honest with them. And have the breeder be honest with you. A good breeder will say, you know what, I don't think my dogs are what you're looking for. And I experienced that with when I got my Saluki. I did talk to a breeder out in the American Midwest who is an active jackrabbit hunter with her Salukis. And they are very focused on catching and taking down rabbits. And that's what she breeds for. And after chatting with her, because I wanted a Saluki with a lot of heart, after talking to her, I realized that I don't want a Saluki with that much heart. That might be wonderful for her, but not wonderful for me with what I want to do with my Saluki. So I looked for a different breeder, and I found a wonderful Saluki. So I think, don't just randomly buy the dog off Kijiji from the farm. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows what you're getting?
True, yeah.
Go to a breeder.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And then is there any advice that you would give her on how to make sure some of the things that she should do to raise that puppy as a friendly?
Well, she definitely wants early training. She wants the early guidance. of a dog trainer.
Perfect.
And she wants to have the dog to have lots of good, positive exposure to people coming and going.
Lovely.
That's not a dog you want to get and hide in the house for the first 6 months of life.
Good point.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
a dog that needs to have a lot of visitors and positive associations. And yes, you just have to be smart about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You should never buy a dog on appearance. Never.
Yeah, it's true. And if a lot of the times the appearance is the first thing that snags people, but then make sure that you're doing some research past that, because some of these breed tendencies will be things that you might not know about, you might not want to live with, you might be okay with living with, but you'll want to know ahead of time so that you can plan your approach to things, etc. So
now, like I had Atari, my Sheltie, and Shelties bark, and that's kind of a well-known fact in the dog world.
Fact.
But I didn't realize until I owned, and I knew I've been around Shelties and I know they bark, but I thought, maybe mine won't bark because I'll be on top of it. But you know what? She barked more than I expected. Yeah. Even with my good guidance and on top of it and knowing, she still barked far more than any of my other dogs. And I realized that that's, genetic. She's going to startle bark when things happen. Yes. And, I did a lot of work, and of course she wasn't a nuisance and it wasn't a big deal, but it surprised me how strong that genetic was. Yeah.
So it's incredible. Genetics are quite incredible.
They are. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
I'm always amazed when I see my dogs do something instinctual. I'm always like, I love instinctual behavior. It really trips my trigger. Analyzing it, I spend a lot of time. Trips my trigger. I spend a lot of times just watching my dogs and observing what they do, the things that interest them. As an example, Ned is incredibly flight aware. He's my most flight aware dog, which is desirable in a hunting dog, right? Yes. Because they will be aware when there's birds flying overhead, and every time he looks up and the birds will be just so high, so high, and I won't have noticed them yet, and he's noticed them, and I just my jaw drops, and I think that's amazing. That's just incredible. Like their instincts are so powerful, and they're there, and I'm not a hunter, and he's not necessarily from strong toller hunting lines in any way. He's just got that great instinct. Right. Yes. And when I see it come out, I love it too. Yes. It's so nice.
Yes. One of our students has a beautiful Brittany Spaniel named Rizzo, and she sends us videos sometimes of Rizzo pointing birds. Yes. And I replay them because I just love to watch. Yeah. I love you, Rizzo.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's Kathy in our online program. Yes. Yeah. Perfect. I knew exactly who you were talking about. Alrighty. So if we were to try to clarify for people whether or not their dogs are seeing them as good leaders, what are some of the things that spring to mind if you have a dog that is not necessarily seeing you as a leader? What are some of the behaviors you might see?
Well, you're going to see a dog that ignores the owner. Mm-hmm. Yeah, their voice doesn't mean anything. A dog that drags the owner about. A dog that just doesn't listen, really. You could tell some dogs are just so unaware of their owner on the end of the leash.
Yeah, it's true. And you know what? I want to say right now, to make people feel a little bit better who are going, oh my gosh, I'm not sure if I'm a good leader or not. You may or may not be a good natural leader for your dogs. I am not a good natural leader. I have to work at it. My instinct is to be, just goofy and have a good time and not worry too much about a lot of things, but
that's in the office. Yes, definitely. I see that. No, you're better at buckling down to work than me.
I'm good at it with work, but then I think outside of work, I'm like, you know what? Okay, I just want to chill out. And I don't have that natural leadership tendency where some people just are natural leaders. You know, dogs just sort of look to them and go, oh my gosh, I know you're the one. Right. And they just follow them, and they become easy dogs for those people who are good natural leaders. And there's very few of those good natural leaders out there. Most of us are fumbling, and we're unsure, and we can be insecure about things. And, so you don't have to be perfect in this. And if it's something that you feel unnatural in, that doesn't mean that you can't acquire good leadership skills. Yes. So,
and that actually is interesting. A lot of times we'll have women say, the dog listens to my husband better. Yes. Why do you think that happens?
Yeah. It is interesting. Yes. So we tend to be a little bit more coddly as women, and it's not even
more nurturing.
More nurturing, and it's not even necessarily I don't even think it's necessarily in the cuddling and like this more soothing, higher pitched voice, etc. I think that because we're more nurturing and more coddling, we often will let things slide a bit more, or we won't follow through, or we'll do so, but in an emotional way instead of following through in just a matter of fact way. You know what? Hey, you can't jump on me. That's just not acceptable. Versus, oh, he jumped on me and I think it's because he likes me, but now I feel bad telling him not to. And you know, that whole process instead of just being black and white with our dogs.
Yes. Which men often sometimes are more just like, hey, knock it off. Like,
a little bit more matter of fact. And the dogs it's the clear information.
Yes.
Right.
I think men, this is all, we're all very generalized here. This is this is not across the board, but women tend to speak in a higher voice too. Whereas men have that deeper, kind of more business-like maybe tone than we do sometimes.
Much less emotional.
Yes.
Yeah. And emotion makes sense to us, actually. I shouldn't say that because emotion doesn't make sense to a lot of people. We're very confused about our emotion a lot of the times. But emotion is not clear for dogs, whereas information is clear for dogs. So, and then once they're clear on the information and they see you as a good leader, you can add in the emotion without losing the leadership qualities.
Yes. That was a really good thing to say. Yes.
Thank you. I think that's what I've relied on and what's got me through, because I am emotional and I like being emotional with my dogs in a good way.
Right. Yes.
But I also
at the beginning, we need to clear information.
Yeah, absolutely. And
then we can be goofy with them.
Exactly. It can't just be the emotion. It has to be good, clear information, training. There has to be some sort of business-like application to help our dogs learn, and then we can have the snuggles and all of those
and
things,
say the silly things to them,
without losing the leadership qualities. So, and that's not even to say that you can't have snuggles right from the beginning. You just have to make sure that it's not just all snuggles. Right. It's not just all about what the dog wants, and a lot of the times freedom. Freedom is
give
such
way too
a
much
huge
freedom.
thing.
Yes.
Huge thing. You know what? We're going to get to that, but I actually wanted to dive into some more specific things that your dog that will tell you that your dog's not quite sure that you're in charge. So if you were to ask your dog to get off the couch and you got any sort of pushback from that, what would you say to that?
I would say that then your dog doesn't recognize you as the leader.
You got it.
Yes.
So in my house, my dogs are allowed on the couch. Again, we did an episode on that a few episodes ago. So if you would like to know, and Swanny's house, they're not allowed on the couch. And that's just personal preference.
Yes. Yeah. Not that. And you know what? My dogs do not. They would get, if they were on the couch, they would hop right off if I told them. Like I would just clap my hands and hey, and off they go. But I want my couch to be a clean spot for me.
Absolutely. And nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
But if you do allow your dogs on the couch and you say, okay, it's time to get off, is there any pushback from that? If your dog wants something that they can't have, so you're on the street and there's a stick and they're wanting to get that stick and you say you can't have that stick right now, is it an argument? Do they dig in and pull to that stick? Is it a big fiasco trying to stop them from getting that stick? Or can you just say, leave it and move them away from it? I mean, understandably, if you say leave it, they should have an understanding of what leave it means through good training.
Right, yeah.
But if you've done that training, it shouldn't be a fight at all. They should be like, oh, okay, yeah, no problem. I got it. I understand. That's what communication has its benefits for.
Or a student asked yesterday, they said that their dog keeps going to chew something in the house. I can't remember what it was. And we tell him and he just goes back. And we tell him and he just goes back. And it's like, well, you need to step in and be a leader and show him he cannot just keep going back.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of things that you could do with that. You can block off access to that space so they can't continue to rehearse. If you're feeling like, okay, in this moment, I'm just tired and I don't want to train right now. So you can take away that option for the dog, or you can roll up your sleeves in that moment and go and train that thing. Right. And whatever the thing is, there needs to be some follow through where you say, that's off limits. And then if the dog says, nah, I don't really believe you, there needs to be some sort of follow through that says, no, that's off limits.
Yes. I have a story that's sort of like that. We had a canary when my son was young named Sprout. He was the best canary ever. And when my son was about, I don't know, maybe a year and a half old, he suddenly decided that he wanted to pester Sprout in his cage. And the cage was right in our living room. And so Ty kept going over and shaking the bars and just, terrorizing poor little Sprout.
Aww.
So right away, I'm like, okay, Ty, you can't do that. And then Ty would stop, and then he'd go back again. And I raised my voice. I got a little bit angry at Ty, and I thought, why won't my child stop terrorizing the bird? And then I realized the distraction was so high. Ty's brain was so overwhelmed by that bird that he couldn't comprehend what I was saying.
Okay.
And all of a sudden I realized the distraction is too high. I need to lessen the distraction. So we moved Sprout's cage to another area of the house.
Okay.
And Ty was fine then.
Okay.
He stopped, and then we were able to slowly bring Sprout's cage back to the living room. But just at that period of development in Ty's brain, it was too overwhelming to have this bird. He couldn't seem to get it through. That he couldn't shake the cage. And I thought it's very similar to dog training. Very similar that we if our dog's struggling, we have to change something.
Yes.
We just can't keep getting, like if I just kept getting angrier and angrier and angry at Ty, that's not good. That's not good for my relationship. So we definitely have to change something.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really interesting analogy to use. It's so important that we give them a fair chance. And so if I were to put that into puppy training perspective, if there's a shoe that just smells so tempting to that puppy in the area that you're in with the puppy, and you just keep telling the puppy to leave that shoe alone, but not really giving them any chance to get things right, that shoe might be the thing that might be the sprout that makes life too difficult for the puppy. So maybe at that point, the shoe needs to be outside of their area until you have taught them the word leave it, what that word means. And then what you do after you've taught them that word leave it means leave the thing alone. Now you bring the shoe back into the scenario and you work on leave it with that shoe, and you reinforce the puppy for leaving the shoe and making the right choice. And you follow through when the puppy says, no, I really want the shoe. And then you re-gauge, am I at the right point to have this shoe in here? Or do I need to do more work with less valuable items and slowly bring the sprout back into the environment?
Right, yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's perfect. So if your dog doesn't respond to known commands, that is your dog saying, you know what, right now, I don't find the value in doing that. I don't find your leadership in making sure that I do that. None of those things are consequential enough that I'm going to stop doing this thing that is rewarding for me.
Yeah, we don't want our dogs to say, oh, boo, I have to stop. We want our dogs to say, oh, my owner has something better for me to do, or my owner's paying attention to me. That's better.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of these things I have taken off of, we have a leadership assessment that I'm actually going to get linked into the show notes below. So on our YouTube podcast channel, we are going to put the leadership assessment to be able to download for you in the show notes. And that basically will take you through some of the questions that we're talking about right now, some of the things that will sort of be and more collectively so than anything, but some of the things that are going to be a little bit of a sign that your dog is maybe not seeing you as being a good leader. Can you take control of the collar? So I was talking about this with my puppies earlier, where I teach them that when I reach in and take the collar and say settle, they need to just drain their energy out. And this is a fabulous skill because puppies go from 0 to 100 sometimes in a heartbeat. So having some sort of communication to be able to say to them, hey, right now is not a good time for you to be losing your marbles. You need to calm in this moment. Having a skill in place for that allows me to then become a good leader in that moment where my puppy is doing something inappropriate. Maybe they're back into a nipping phase or something of that nature. We tend to address nipping very early on, but sometimes they go through stages where it'll come back again and rear its ugly head. So if you are in that moment where suddenly you're starting to nip wildly at me, can I take your collar and tell you to settle? And you realize that, oh, okay, that was something I shouldn't be doing. Or not even necessarily that it's they know that they're wrong in that moment. It's that we are giving them an alternate way of thinking in that moment so that we can then take that opportunity to nip away and we can remove the reward that nipping gives the puppy. So they're not rehearsing. Nipping is fun. Nipping at you and is the way we play. And I'm getting away with it because you're trying to grab at me, et cetera, et cetera. Instead, we've got this picture that is familiar for the puppy where I can reach in, take the collar, tell them settle, and I can take control, and they don't ever fight that control because they've learned that it's valuable to give in to that control. So such a simple thing, but a huge leadership item.
Yes. Well, one thing I'll just mention too, my Sheltie Atari was, I knew this when we got her from the breeder, that she was going to be fearful. She was a bit of a special needs puppy, and my son chose her. She had some physical problems, and my son really wanted to give her a good home. And I thought, you know what? Yes, let's take her on. And she was a fearful puppy, and became a fearful adult too. I had to be a strong leader for her that she could trust.
Absolutely.
In order to achieve what I achieved with her and do the things that I did with her, she had to have complete trust in me, because her genetics were telling her to be afraid, to run. But she had that trust to hang out with me and to do what I asked. And I never put her in bad situations. I was always very, very cautious and with her, and made good, firm, fair decisions for her. So if you have a dog too that's fearful, being a strong leader to them is going to make their lives easier.
Absolutely.
And they're going to listen to you much better.
Oh, that is so true.
It's not just the wild and crazy dog. It's also the dog that's anxious.
I love that. I'm glad you brought that up. And if you want to learn more about Atari and some of the things that Instructor Swanny did to help her through, we have a great YouTube video that you did for us a couple of years ago.
Right. Yeah. Many years. I think it was many years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's on our YouTube channel in amongst those 850 YouTube videos.
We have another good one with Instructor Robbie and her Border Collie Scene too. She adopted a little bit older fearful puppy.
Yeah.
And yes.
Yeah, absolutely. That one's a little bit more recent, and I think I make a cameo in that one actually.
Yes. So even you're often with a fearful dog, you want to coddle them and say it's okay, but often that makes them worse.
Oh, absolutely.
We need to, you know what? You're okay. You're with me. I'm the leader. Yeah. It's like when if there's an emergency going on around your house and everyone has to evacuate, you're going to stick close to the people in charge. You're going to say, okay, I'm not going with the other people who are terrified and running the wrong way. I'm going with the people who are calm and confident and are leading us to safety.
Exactly.
And I hope that never happens, but
hopefully not. But
in an emergency, I'm looking for calm, confident leaders.
Yeah. And even not necessarily an emergency, just at some point where you're intimidated by whatever the situation may be, you're looking to somebody who's not intimidated by the situation, because that is going to give you confidence in moving forward through it. So perfect. Can you groom them? I think that's a big one. Can you handle them? Can you touch them? Can you groom them? I think this is, and again, understandable that it is unnatural for us to open our dogs' mouths and reach in, etc. So we do need to do some sort of teaching to make them comfortable with these things, make them comfortable with having their toenails trimmed and their coats brushed, etc. But if they say, no, I don't want you doing that right now, and they snark at you a bit, or they're not willing to be compliant in that scenario, there's probably some leadership issues there.
I worked at an emergency vet hospital, and on the weekends regular vet clinics are closed, and we had a client come in to emergency with her bottle of eardrops, and her dog, it had an ear infection, and she could not get these eardrops in, and they had to be put in twice a day. And it was very expensive to come to emergency for the whole weekend to get these eardrops put in her dog's ears.
No doubt.
And but because her dog did not respect her enough to allow her to look in the ear, that cost her a bit of money. Yes.
Oh my goodness. And that stuff is huge. We need to be able to medicate and keep our dogs safe. And sometimes it doesn't feel great. Yeah,
like ticks have exploded in Southern Ontario.
So bad.
We never had, I remember not that long ago, we didn't have ticks.
Yeah.
But now we have to examine our dogs after every walk in the forest or the long grass for ticks.
Yeah.
And if you can't check them out, those ticks fall off the dog and walk around your house, and they could get you while you're sleeping.
Oh my gosh, it's awful. It's the thing of nightmares.
Yes.
Thing of nightmares. If your dog is demanding things from you, either by barking or by shoving their nose into you, those...
Or you get on the phone. As soon as you get on the phone, hello, your dog's like, bark, bark.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are some of the signs for sure. If you find yourself calling your dog stubborn a lot, chances are there's a leadership issue there, because dogs really are not stubborn.
No.
And if we are labeling them as stubborn, that means that they're not giving us the good behavior that we would like. And there's a hole in that, because because dogs are not stubborn. And if they have the right incentive to be compliant and they have the right understanding and the right training, they will be compliant.
Yes.
So,
Or similar, he knows this.
yes.
He knows this.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Dogs are tremendously situational as well, just to go into an aside quickly with that. So just because your dog can sit perfectly and stay for, 10 minutes in the kitchen waiting for their food bowl does not mean they can generalize that to new environments. You need to do some training in new environments before you can expect that your dog is going to be able to generalize. And the final thing that I have on my list here to make sure that we hit is if your dog is afraid of you, if you see your dog cower when you come close, if you see your dog take off when you come close, sometimes there's this catch me if you can game that dogs play, but if your dog is actually worried and leaving you, then chances are you have not shown good leadership qualities. But the good news is now is the time to take control of that and to become a good leader for your dog. So what are some of the tactics that people can take? And I know we've already touched on some of these through the episode, so don't worry about being repetitive.
Okay.
But what are some of the tactics that come to mind that people can take to be good leaders for their dogs?
Well, is start training your dog.
Perfect.
That's
number one on my list too.
Right.
Go figure.
Yes. And training them in a good way.
Yes.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
Enrolling in a good obedience school or a good online course or doing a private lesson, have a trainer come to your house and help you, reestablish that.
Yeah.
It's never too late.
Absolutely.
Dogs are very forgiving.
They are.
And they're just the most honest creatures. So, yes, you can definitely start at any point and make a change in your time with your dog.
Absolutely. So figuring out how to give them good feedback in that good training is an absolute must. Mm-hmm. And it's so important to be able to rely on those listening skills to keep our dogs safe. The basics, they must listen in a day-to-day life situation. They must come when they're called. They must be mannerly and responsive. And those are only musts if you give them good guidance to get to that space.
Yes.
What else makes a good leader?
Well, we've talked about,
we've talked about
fair,
management.
And being fair with your dog. Providing them with the things that they want and need and making it apparent that you are the provider. That's one thing why we don't like free feeding.
Yeah.
Because the food just appears in the bowl.
Absolutely.
But if the dog sees us pouring the food and we hold the food and put the bowl down and then we take the bowl away if they don't eat, that shows that we're providing that.
Absolutely. And I class that under managing resources. Mm-hmm. So you have all sorts of resources at your disposal that your dog wants. And you can either give them to them freely and then they lose their significance in terms of your ability to provide, or you can use those resources to your advantage to be able to control the resources and guide your dog to the understanding that you are wonderful and a good leader because you bring all of these good things. So what are some of the resources that we can use? So you mentioned free feeding. So food is a huge resource.
Food, toys.
Toys, yep.
Affection.
Affection's a huge one too, yeah.
Exercise. Mm-hmm. Freedom.
Freedom's
the biggest one.
Freedom.
Yes.
What was that? Was that Braveheart?
I never saw Braveheart. I was thinking the song, Freedom.
I won't let you down.
Freedom.
Well, it's a good thing that this is a podcast and the topic is on educational content for dogs, and we're not a podcast of singers. Because I don't think that was very good.
No, I don't think that was very good. No.
But we do take requests. If you have a song you would like to hear us do, drop it in the comments below. Freedom is huge. People often want to give this is one of the biggest mistakes people make. We actually recorded a video a few months ago, and the videographers came to a bunch of our trainers individually and said, what's the biggest mistake? What's the first mistake or the biggest mistake that new puppy owners make? And 10 out of 10 dog trainers agreed. We all said the biggest mistake people make, giving their dogs too much freedom, giving their puppies too much freedom, giving their puppies too much freedom. And it's so funny to watch the video come out as a final product because every single one of us picked that as the biggest mistake people make. And I think that goes back to the guilt factor. We're busy. We have busy lives. We want to give our puppies and our dogs the best possible lives we can. And bless our hearts for doing that. That's wonderful. But puppies and dogs are different than humans. And where we think of crates and cages and jails and, taking away freedom from humans as this very negative thing. With a dog, it's not a negative thing.
Right.
It's a means of controlling freedom. So it's like putting the baby in the crib or in the playpen instead of just saying, oh, I hope he does his best out there in the living room and doesn't get near the electrical sockets. Yes. It's a kindness and it's a means to freedom in the future, because the unfortunate thing about giving freedom too early is that it ends up being taken for granted by the pup. It ends up being a resource that we lose an incredible amount of control with. And it also ends up being a situation where when they get the freedom before they know the rules, they make the mistakes. And then we get into that spiral of being upset with them, being angry, starting to yell, having that, miscommunication where they don't understand what it is we're looking for. And we end up creating this aversive relationship between us and our dogs instead of creating a relationship that is based on the trust and the understanding and the guidance that we are looking for with our dogs. So think about freedom as something that is earned, and not in a militant way. It's earned by the puppy learning the rules of the house and understanding that, when they understand that shoe we talked about is off limits, that's a point where we can start to give them freedom, because the dog is going to self-govern. They're going to rely on the rules that they've learned. And unfortunately, what happens when you give your puppy too much freedom right out at the gate is they learn the wrong rules. They often learn two sets of rules. They learn that when you're there and present, they can't do this specific thing, but when you're not there, it's okay to go and chew that shoe. So,
or to go into the bathroom garbage and dump it over and...
Absolutely. Like, freedom is huge. Toys, affection, food, all of these things. And they can be given ad nauseum to your puppy who is being good as gold and following the rules and not getting into mischief, because you have controlled the freedom and you've given them good guidance. So think about it that way, the controlling their freedom and having them spend time in their crates when you can't supervise means that you'll have all sorts of future time to enjoy with them, and they'll have all the freedom in the world. Like, we did a coaching call recently on crate training for our Puppy Essentials students online. We do those weekly. We get together weekly with the entire group and we talk about, we take deep dives into things that are important topics for everybody. And we talked about the ability to use your crate now as a means of controlling the puppy so that they're not getting into mischief when you can't watch them and we're busy. We can't watch them 24/7. So we need to make sure that we have a means of keeping them safe when we can't. And I said, I don't even have a crate set up in my house right now, because my dogs are all at the stage where they don't need to be in their crates. They're trustworthy when I go out and leave them home alone together. They're trustworthy when I'm home and we're, doing different things and I'm not paying attention. And that's because I made sure that the rules and the understanding were well established before I gave them that freedom.
Right. Yes.
So make them earn it, not in a militant way, but in a way that really enhances your relationship and stops you from relying on things like calling them stubborn and being upset with them, etc. And it brings you back to the joy factor. You can have this joyful relationship with your young puppy because they are being controlled and learning the rules in a slow, steady drip, instead of it being a grind where you're constantly chasing them around or coming into the room and finding that they've chewed the couch or, something.
Yes. And they can do a lot of damage. One of my friends, they decided that they didn't want to use the crate any longer. And they came home one day to their kitchen floor had been chewed and ripped up.
Oh my goodness.
To the point where they had to put an entire new kitchen floor down.
Wow.
The dog had done a massive amount of damage to their floor.
Wow. That's horrendous for the kitchen, and it's potentially horrendous for the dog. If they swallowed pieces of that floor as they're ripping it up, that could cause blockage. It could cause all sorts of damage.
Yes.
That's a scary situation.
And just now the dog knows that it's fun to rip up floors.
Yeah.
So now you have another problem. The dog's going to say, I can't wait till the next time my owners leave so I can get a hold of another floor.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? It's nice for our dogs to be able to chew things. It's nice for our dogs to be able to have controlled chew. And this is some of the stuff that gets established when they're young and when we're using our crate and keeping good control with them, because they get into the habit of chewing the things that they should chew. So then down the road, when we're looking to give them more freedom, instead of them looking around the house for things they can chew, chew. They've gotten into the habit of chewing their Kong or chewing their nylon bone or chewing the things that they should be chewing. So that's what they gravitate to in that scenario.
Yeah, because they have no history of chewing things they shouldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the last thing on my list here of being a good leader is remaining calm and patient so that you can guide them. And sometimes this is a tough thing because we are emotional creatures.
We are,
and we don't always have good control of our emotions.
Yes.
So,
and sometimes you feel like, I love this puppy. Why has he let me down? And
absolutely.
we can't get in that trap.
Absolutely.
We can't fall in that trap.
That's actually something, let's talk about that, because we have a lot of students that come in and they're at that state where they're thinking like, I do everything I can for this puppy and he just doesn't know I exist and doesn't care that I exist. And, you know, if you set up properly, your dog will care that you exist and will give you the best possible version of themselves that they can. So set up for success. That is one way to be able to remain calm and patient and control your emotions, because if your dog is getting it right, it's joyful and it's wonderful.
Right. Yes.
Instead of being frustrating.
Yes.
Take breaks when you need it.
Yes.
You know, there's nothing that says that you're on any sort of schedule. I mean, obviously you want to make sure that your dog is clear and understands how to come when they're called, for example, before you let them off leash, but that just means you can't let them off leash for a little bit longer. And there's no timeline here.
Yep.
You know, it's when it's safe for you to do so. So if you're getting frustrated with something and you know that you're about to get emotional and that's going to have a negative impact with your puppy, take a break.
Yep.
Take a break. You know,
Definitely,
go and tuck them in the crate and go outside and go for a walk around the block and then come back and try it again if you feel up to it, and have a glass of wine if you don't feel up to it.
Yeah, all of us have those moments when we have a new puppy in the house where it's like, why did I get a puppy?
Yeah.
We all have that feeling.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Life was so simple before I got this puppy. Now it's 2 a.m. and I'm out in the yard in my house coat waiting for it to pee.
And it's raining.
Why?
Yes.
Why?
Yeah.
I used to be able to sleep through the night.
Right. That's some people.
A
lot of people complain about that. But it's like, well, for the first few weeks, expect your sleep will be disrupted.
Yes, absolutely. Control your emotions here on my list, which is exactly what we're talking about. But if you have a puppy, if you have a child, if you have anybody who is relying on you to guide them, you have a responsibility to control your emotions. So whatever that means, that might mean getting help for controlling your emotions.
Right,
There's nothing wrong with that. Our emotions are they're very confusing at times. They're very cloudy, and there's no reason that you can't figure out and get on top of your emotions so that you can be the best leader you can possibly be for all of the entities in your life that look to you for guidance. And then I have in capital letters here, big font, consistency.
Right. Yes.
Be consistent. Talk about consistency for a second. What does that look like?
Well, that means that the dog has the same consequences for everything. So yes, like, if you do this is what happens. You do this is what happens. Yeah. And we're consistent.
Good and bad consequences.
Right, yes. Yeah. And the dog learns that, okay, like I know what to expect. My leader's predictable. And it's much easier for an animal to follow a predictable life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this has been a fantastic episode. I hope that you have a little bit more clarity on the idea of leadership now. I hope it doesn't seem quite as overwhelming and scary as it can be. Make sure that you follow us on our Facebook page and check us out on Instagram as well so that you can see when we release all our episodes. And be sure to subscribe to the McCann Dogs podcast on your favorite podcast platform. On that note, I'm Instructor Shannon.
Instructor Swanny.
Happy training.
The McCann Dogs podcast is brought to you by McCann Professional Dog Trainers. We help dog owners to have a well-behaved, four-legged family member. Please give us a call at 905-659-1888 or visit us at mccanndogs.com. Happy training.